Welcome to the imaginary gallery once again. This is Narcissist Trash Talk. And the subject at hand tonight is do not argue with the covert narcissist. And to illustrate this particular point, what I will start off with is a so-called normal conversation where you, for example, used to believe a certain way and then you checked out your beliefs, you investigated and found out that, oh my goodness, your beliefs were a little bit wrong. So you grew from this experience. So you've taken that with you throughout your life. Well, then later on down the road, you may run into a person who actually is right in the place you were before your knowledge occurred. So you feel this interaction as a way to educate another person, show them the light, and bring them up to speed where you are. It can be a very positive experience. It can be a very fulfilling experience to see someone below you in the knowledge level, being confused like you had been, and then pulling them up. And it's a very nice feeling. It's a feeling of accomplishment because you've made a difference in someone else's life. Well, you could only enjoy such a thing if you had what they call empathy, which our cluster B narcissist seems to lack. So the example I give is music. I'm a music person. So a band. There is a band called the B-52s. And that band has two ladies in it that sing. There's Kate Pearson and there is Cindy Wilson. And they both have pretty voices that blend together and harmonize and sound beautiful. Well, many years ago, joined one of those record clubs where you get so many record albums for a penny, and I did it and I ordered theirs. Their first two, the B-52s and Wild Planet. Well, I listened to it as a kid, and I listened to it as I grew up older and older and older, and over the time I learned that, oh, there are two chicks. And I would look closer into the liner notes and see, oh, this song was sung by Cindy. This song was sung by Kate. This one was a duet. This one was all of them. And I started to distinguish the differences between their voices. Well, Cindy Wilson has the Sinead O'Connor Mandinka type voice, which I instantly fell in love with. And one of their songs from Bouncing Off the Satellites was called Girl from Ipanema Goes to Greenland. Well, it was one of my favorites. And fast forward several years later, I worked in a business with a coworker, and I would play the music for her. And she actually said she really liked that Girl from Ipanema. She loved the way her voice did the chica, whatever she does, and she liked it. So that was great, and I remembered that because I have an imprinted memory that when somebody says they like something that I like, I'll remember. Well, a few years later, Good Stuff came out, and it turns out Cindy Wilson left the band. Well, I was talking to this same girl who loved that song, Girl from Ipanema, and I said, oh, did you hear? Cindy Wilson's leaving the B-52s. Well, the girl didn't know everything that was known or knowable, and she had said, yeah, like she did anything in the band anyway. And I felt a sick feeling of dread and disgust to think, what did you just say? And I had to show her, it's like, remember that one song you said you really liked and you liked the voice? Well, guess what? That was Cindy. So I was able to show her her error because she heard Good Stuff and heard all the multi-tracked vocals thinking, well, they didn't need the other girl, whoever she was, and I had to let her know that Cindy Wilson was a very main part. She's the one who did the, why don't you dance with me? I'm not no limbo! and she was the crazy sounding one, which Kate's fine too, but so I was able to show her the error of her ways, and she then, of course, shaped up right away and thought, oh my goodness, I can't believe I said that. And it's a great feeling because you know something someone else doesn't, and you share it with them, and they latch on and think, oh, I got it. Well, let's switch back over to the evil world of your narcissist, especially your covert, and like in the beginning with your narcissist, things are probably smooth. There are no arguments because your every wish is met under their command, so you have nothing to complain about. However, the more and more time you spend together is when you start to notice the discrepancies, especially involving the mirroring. The people who try to act like they're just like you are, but then you can't help but notice certain behaviors that are nothing like you are. And you start to get the feeling that they're just claiming to be like you are without knowing what being like you are really means. So after a while, you begin to detect discrepancies. You begin to detect inconsistencies. And up to this point, you've been spoiled. You've been treated like royalty, but these people don't seem to realize that they can't fake being a real human being for too long without being detected. Well, at this point, you start to notice the things they say about themselves daily, and then notice the things you know about them as well, which do not mix with the description. So, if you're like I was, who's very critical, like, for example, if I drive by a billboard and I see a word that's spelled wrong, or I look in a magazine and see a heading that is spelled wrong, I feel a need to correct it. Well, I'm the number one enemy of the narcissist person because they're full of contradictions. And what you'll likely do if you're a person like that and you are dealing with a narcissistic person who's spit out a contradiction, well, when you address it and, like, say, hey, I can't help it, remember you said that you felt this way about this, but you actually did that, you'll be likely to be given a response of just a plain face with no reaction, which makes you feel like maybe you were wrong, or maybe they're clueless or retarded or whatever. But what you're missing is the interaction I just described with the healthy B-52 conversation, where someone's wrong, but they're making a strong statement, and then you're there to say, hey, wait, look at this and look at that, and then they're like, oh, wow, I didn't know that, oh, thanks. You don't get that with the narcissist. You get silence, you get a straight face, you get indifference, but you do not ever see like a red face or blushing or any type of reaction of being wrong when you point out a blatant inconsistency, for example. And if you study narcissism, you will learn that the person who's targeted you is basically a fake persona. It's phony. It's mirrored off of you, and clearly they don't know what they're doing because they're pretending to be like you, but then they're behaving in ways that are not like you. So what is bound to happen, as it has with me on several occasions, with several fools, you begin to, like, develop in your mind two separate categories, two separate files. You've got the file they give you, which is, oh, this is how I am, this is how I am, and then you also have a second file, which is based on your observations and knowledge, and you can see a definite discrepancy. Well, if you've ever dealt with such a narcissistic individual, and you've listened to all the stuff they've said, and you've watched all the things they've done, chances are you may have gotten the inclination to have a discussion and say, look, I can't help but notice you're saying all these things, but then I see those things. I think that you're off. I think you got something wrong going on. And you try like to make it make sense, but guess what happens? You're given more indifference or blatant refusal to accept anything you're saying, like complete dismissal, which is a sign right there or a red flag. you're noticing a definite inconsistency, and 10 people on the street could notice the same thing, but then when you address it, you're treated like, oh, that's completely wrong. It's a sign you're dealing with a disordered, toxic person. Because if you study the literature on these narcissistic people, it comes up often that if you attack their persona or their mask that they're wearing, they become extremely defensive. They do not listen to one single word you've said. Even if 99% of it's accurate, they will dismiss the entire thing. And what's the reason? The reason you'll be told in the literature is that that persona is all they have. So if you attack it and you say it's wrong or it's inaccurate, that's all they have. Well, I have an addition to I have something to add to this, which is, it's true. That is all they have. But it's all they have in relation to you. Because when they leave your presence and they go to their next target, they have a completely different persona, which may actually include the characteristics that you think are really there now with you, but you'll never be told that. So, yes, it's true. When you attack their fake persona, they act offended. They fight you. They do not even give one word of your observations any kind of credibility. Why? Well, because they're banking on that fictitious persona as getting what it wants from you, and part of the game is you're supposed to buy it. So if you don't buy it and you attack it, you will then become this person's abuser. This person will become a victim and say, well, I wish you would quit trying to tell me what I really am. And you're like, I'm not. I'm pointing out the facts that indicate what you're saying you are isn't what you are. But none of that works because they just expect you to believe their fictitious fantasy image, and yet you're sitting there picking it apart in pieces saying, I'd love to accept your image, but you got some problems here. But see, they just don't seem to relate to that. So the point of it is, when I say don't argue with the narcissist, it doesn't do any good, because you could have your case laid out exactly why they're not the animal lover they claim to be when you name 50 different instances of abuse towards animals. But you'll be told, oh, I told you why I did those things. I'm not abusive to animals, and other nonsense labyrinth crap. So remember, they're always right. And when they are always right, it's blended into their fantasy world, meaning they're not really right at all. But for the sake of argument, they're going to claim that they're right. So in their twisted mind, they won that argument because they're right, even though everybody else knows they're not right. But they're not right because they are living in a fantasy world. They're not based in reality. So you can prove your point 1,000 times over, and they will still claim your point's wrong based on some fictitious fantasy-like claim. So remember, when you're dealing with such a person, there won't be any equality. You won't experience the beauty of the first interaction I discussed, where you find somebody who's misunderstanding something and you show them and clear the air for them, and they grow and think, wow, thank you for showing me. Isn't going to happen with the narcissist. Sorry. So realize the monster it is and the trash you're dealing with, and please dispose of it promptly.
Look, what's your problem? So I dumped you. I didn't need you anymore. I don't know why you have to go around telling people that I did this and I did that. I simply just tell people that it didn't work out. Why do you have to tell them all these details? Why do you have to tell them that I found someone else behind your back? You know that's not true. He's just a friend. What is wrong with you? Why can't you just tell them it didn't work out like I tell people? That's all I say.
So what? What if I did tell a few people? that you cheated on me and I couldn't take it. They don't need to know that it was me who did it, and you're not going to tell them either, and if you do, I will sue. I will take you to court, because you have no reason to smear my name. It's just not fair. It's just not right. Just tell them it didn't work out like I do to, well, at least to most people. I don't know where she heard that. I never told her that. She's lying to you. She probably wants you. You have to believe me.
So what? I told you my sister wanted to kill you. Well, I swear I didn't smear your name. She just doesn't like you. I didn't tell her anything. I swear.
Fine. I admit it. I'm a lesbian, and I left you for another woman's snatch. So get off of it and forget we ever met.
Would you please stop telling people that I'm a lesbian? That was a phase, and it is ruining my future. So keep your mouth shut, or I'm gonna shut it for you.